Hello and welcome to this week's episode of My CP Does Not Define Me, where we focus less on the dis and more on the ability of what we can do. Join us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, live on the Disability Global Broadcast and Facebook Live. Looking forward to seeing you there.
What's up, everybody? It's that time again. It is Wednesday. It is actually the 17th. The date is not wrong on the flyer this week. And we are ready for episode 73 of My CP Does Not Define Me. And we've got a good one. It's D to the J with a roll away. Welcome, everybody. As you come in, we are live on the Disability Global Broadcast, and we are live on Facebook Live. I'd like to welcome everybody to the show. Hey, Cindy, how are you? Welcome. I've got a great guest today. He's a personal friend of mine, been friends for a long time. I want to introduce Rick Vroman. Yes, it is Roman, but the V is silent. I just figured that one out last week myself. So I want to introduce Rick to the show. Rick, how are you? Thank you for being here.
I'm fine, DJ. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Can hear you great. Can hear you great.
Okay.
So for our viewers, I've got, I put the flyer out, but do us a favor and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, where you are, that kind of thing, whatever you want to share, and we'll go from there. How about that?
Okay, I'd be glad to do that. I'm, I guess, start out by saying I'm 76 years old and live in Suffolk, Virginia. Although I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, grew up outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, went to college in Pennsylvania, and then joined the Navy in 1967 and went in. That was during Vietnam, and I figured I think I'd rather go in the Navy than get drafted into the Army and handed a rifle and go to Vietnam. So I went in the Navy. I was going to stay for 3 years. That was my commitment, and I ended up staying for 27. So it it obviously worked for me. I was a supply corps officer, which is the business managers of the Navy, and that's what I did. Served on 5 different ships. I was involved in the evacuation of Saigon in 1975. And we lived all over the world, Japan twice, California, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Norfolk. In fact, what brought me to Norfolk and why I'm in Suffolk is because I resisted coming to this area and then got assigned to a ship at a fairly senior level, and you can't turn that down. So I took that, and here we are. Since 1986, we've been we moved to DC and then Pennsylvania, but back here. And this is where we decided to retire and live the rest of our life. So we live on Lake Cahoon in Suffolk. It's beautiful, and we're very, 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 very happy. After I retired from the Navy, I became a contractor to the Navy, developing software, then became a civil servant with the Navy. And then when I got tired of that, I went and taught in the graduate program in public health at Eastern Virginia Medical School. So I had all those different careers. It was wonderful. But then I decided to retire and do volunteer work and that type of thing. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Suffolk Police Department. I volunteer with the Western Tidewater Free Clinic. I'm on the Wetlands Board for Suffolk. In the meantime, I got a black belt in karate. I had been studying karate all over the world, but every time we moved, I had to start out again as a white belt. But finally, when we got here, I was able to go with Tiger Martial Arts, and that's where I met DJ, and that's how we became friends along that path. So that's kind of my story. That's my history. I've been married for 54 years, have 2 kids and 3 grandchildren.
Is there anything you don't do?
Oh yeah, I'll get my wife in here, and she'd be glad to go through the list, but I don't think you have enough time, DJ.
We'll make time. Honestly, Rick's been one of my best friends for a long time, and I guess my first question, kind of going into the show a little bit, you said your original commitment was to stay in the Navy for 3 years,
right?
And you decided to stay. I ended up staying 27. You said it worked for you. Can you elaborate on that? What made it work for you?
Oh, I think it was a couple of things. I didn't realize what a good opportunity the Supply Corps was, because when I went in the Navy, I wanted to drive ships, but I'm blind as a bat. So they wouldn't assign me to be a line officer, which drives ships, flies planes, that type of thing. They said, you're going to be a Supply Corps officer. And I said, what in the world is that? And then they explained it to me. And so I understood, went to Officer Candidate School, went to Supply Corps School in Athens, Georgia, and then ended up on a destroyer as my first tour as the supply officer. And really what kept me in is I was down in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, going through refresher training when I got orders to release from active duty, because that was 1969. And, even though Vietnam was going hot and heavy, the way that they determine who stays in the service is by numbers. And it's a money game. And so I guess they had too many officers at my level. So they said, hey, we're going to send you home. And I said, well, that's not a bad idea, but I'm in Cuba and I got to get a job. I've got a family. So I went over to a bigger ship where there was a more senior Supply Corps officer. And I said, hey, here's my problem. And he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to go back to Athens and teach. And because I like to do that. And he got on the phone, and back in those days, the only phone was like a one-way radio type of thing to DC. He called the detailers. Bottom line was, I got orders to go to Athens, Georgia to teach. And that was my first encounter with the Supply Corps and how it took care of its people. And so I went back to Athens. I taught for a couple of years, and I was getting ready to get out. And they said, the Navy said, well, how'd you like to go to grad school? And I said, not a bad idea. I was teaching computers. And they said, we'll send you out to Monterey, California. You can go through the graduate program to get your computer systems management master's degree. And I said, okay. So I got to work during the day. I go to school at night. And they said, no. All you do is go to school. I said, you're kidding me. And you're going to pay for it? And they said, yeah. So I said, how can I turn down Monterey, California, a master's degree? It doesn't cost me anything except I have to pay back 2 years for every one. And, so I did that. And by then it was getting like I had 7, 8, 9 years in, and I knew you could retire at 20. So I just said, this is pretty good. And I met a lot of wonderful people. And it was great because the more senior I got, we would go to a new duty station and we'd know people there already. So it wasn't like a civilian picking up and moving and going somewhere and knowing nobody. And the Navy takes care of their own. So, they took care of me. We moved like 15 times in 27 years. But it was great because they were so good to me. And that's why I stayed. And then I tried to pay it back. As I got more senior, I would get a hold of these junior officers and I would say, hey, come here, let me talk to you a little bit. And I would try to resolve any problems they were having. I would be their sea daddy and take care of them. I would call Washington if necessary. I just tried to give back what was given to me. And
what did that, as an individual, I hear you talking about this and I can hear the passion in it. First of all, moving 15 times, you said that, the Navy, takes care of their own. That right there is, I think, why a lot of people are in, because you get taken care of. They don't just drop you in and leave you alone. What was that like for you, moving 15 times and knowing that you had the backing of the Navy and knowing where you were going was going to be reputable?
Well, that was very important because I'm a security-minded individual, as you'll find out later in the conversation when we talk about my problem. But it was because they did take care of you. Of course, they paid for the move and they met you when you got there. They took care of you. They took your family. If you helped you find housing, they just made it a relative, what is really a difficult process, which is to pack all your household goods and move across the country. That's a tough thing. And here again, I should drag my wife in because she's the one that suffered through that the most. And then when you get kids and the kids are in school, now you're yanking them out of school and you're taking them somewhere else. They have to go into a new school. It becomes more difficult the more senior you get. But it was the Navy made it as good as they could make it for me, and it worked out very well. We got to see things. Like I said, we went to Japan twice. Dana came and visited me in Spain when the ship went to Spain, and the kids came for Christmas in Spain, and it was a wonderful experience.
Do you miss it?
No, not really. I think by the end of 27, you get to the point where you always look at what the next job may be. And if you can say to yourself, that job's not going to be as rewarding or as much fun as what I'm doing now, it's time to punch out. And that's what I did. I was in Pennsylvania, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. I was a commanding officer of a central design activity for computer systems. And they said, we'd like you to go to Washington, D.C. and work for the Secretary of the Navy. And I said, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun. I don't like politics. And the higher up you go in any organization, the more political it becomes.
Yeah.
So I said, thanks very much. I've had a wonderful career. I'm going home.
And once you got out of the hustle and bustle, because there's a lot of hustle and bustle there. You're constantly going. Is there time to discharge? Is there time to when you're going full throttle, whether you're working on computers, whether you're working on ships, whether you're doing whatever you're doing, working with the government, is there a time to say, oh my God, I'm dealing with all this. When can I just let loose a little bit? When can I, all of this? Is there a time to just kind of let it all go for a little bit and relax? I mean, do you have downtime?
Yeah, I think that lasted about 2 weeks. And because I'm a workaholic by nature, and when I went to different jobs, like when I got out and I was a contractor, and then I was a civil servant, then I was a professor down at Eastern Virginia Medical School, I worked the same, I just worked my butt off and worked very hard. So until I retired as a teacher, I didn't know what it was to have good downtime. I mean, I would take breaks and vacations, but when I got home and I don't have to get up this morning. I don't have to go to work. And like I said, that lasted about 2 weeks.
Since I've known you, you've always been very structured. You have a routine. You have things to do.
Absolutely.
And you, I think that's kind of what drew me to you, is how you process things. We started working on katas together. We started training together. I found it, very therapeutic. And you and Sensei Whitaker were, among the same age and working together, and he took a liking to you as well. And us training in martial arts together. What was that like for you? You said you'd been in martial arts all over the world, and having to start over each time as a white belt, and now you finally made it to black belt and you've accomplished your goal. What was that like for you?
Well, I really enjoyed it, and for me, it was, it was not so much about knowing how to kick somebody's ass, that you learn the martial arts, and that, a lot of people have that conception of karate and the martial arts, that you just want to go beat up people. And that wasn't it. That wasn't it at all. I got into it actually in California, but then moved right to Japan and actually studied in Japan for 2 years with a Japanese instructor. And I became very attracted to the cultural and spiritual side of the martial arts. I did recognize the value of being able to defend yourself. I think we all need to know how to defend ourselves. But that wasn't the big draw for me. I enjoyed doing the katas, which are programmed exercises, which every move, as you know, DJ, in the kata is a self-defense or a striking move,
or both.
But they're programmed into almost like a dance. You have to watch people do it. And so I really like that. I like the spiritual side of the martial arts, and studied, where the certain martial arts came from, and, their origin, in India to China to Japan, and became very interested in the cultural side of it. So that's really what I enjoy. And I think, as you know, I wrote a paper on our style of martial arts, and
getting ready to mention that,
and where it all came from, because I traced it all the way back to India the best I could, through China, through Okinawa to mainland Japan, and all the different styles and the Japanese names and things like that. So it just fascinated me.
And if I'm not mistaken, the two villages were Naha and Tomi. Naha and the Tomi village.
Yeah, there are actually 3 of them in Okinawa, and I can't remember the other one, but those are 2 of them.
Mhm.
In Okinawa, where it came, and then it spread to the mainland of Japan. A lot of people don't know that, but that's actually how it got there, and it started in China.
The most amazing thing for me before we get into the other part of the show is you talk about the culture and how serious the martial arts is over there because in Okinawa and in China and in I believe Korea they train 12 months under their local government, and they're as passionate about martial arts as the Americans are about baseball. It is I mean, they know their stuff. And going into tournaments and different katas, when they make a mistake, the audience just, they know when they make a mistake. And it is the most beautiful thing. I love it. I mean, I've been studying now for 11 years. Of course, you've got some on me with that, but it's just, I think it's the most amazing thing. And it's really kind of like you said, it's not about just kicking somebody's butt. It's really going in to train yourself not to fight, but to know how to, if you need to, and to get out of danger when you need to. That is the piece of it that is, for me, that is the mindset of carrying yourself as a martial artist. And I believe that you helped a lot with that, in your style of growing up, because you can be 76 years old and you can go, you know what? I still have a lot of growing to do in this. I still have a long way to go in this field. It's not, I'm here. I paid my 76 years. This is what you have, one of the most kind of laid back, just you're open, man, and you go for it. You do what you got to do. You put in your time. I guess you pay your dues. It's like you're never at the front of the line, and I respect the heck out of that, because a lot of people will be like, man, I'm 76 years old. I've been studying this stuff since I was in diapers. You can't teach me anything. And some people are like you. They understand the value to be taught and understand what it's like to have an instructor to go, you know, this is why we do this. This is why that kata is the way it is. And you break down a kata and you find throws and self defenses and strikes, and you're going, I didn't know that. That's when you are able to grow in here, in spirit and in mindset. And I think that's powerful to be able to see that and know that and then apply it to your everyday life. It's an amazing thing.
Well said. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to the martial arts. It's great exercise. You learn self-defense. You learn self-discipline. You have to learn katas with 50 moves in them. And if you don't think that's not beneficial to a geezer like me, it's that's the thing that happens. They say your brain, use it or lose it, and that's absolutely true. And if you got older listeners on there, if you're not exercising your mind in doing Sudoku or whatever it is that strains your brain a little bit, you're going to lose those brain cells. And getting them back is harder than keeping them.
We talked about this on a couple of my last shows. With cerebral palsy and with different disabilities, spina bifida, MS, all of the different disabilities that are across the world. Even if you have the same disability, it can still be different. Stretching and using your body and keeping your body limber is so important. Because once those muscles tighten up, it is almost impossible to get them back to where they need to be, to regain that elasticity. Once you lose it, it's gone, and it's very hard to get back. But I love what you said about your brain. If you don't use it, if you don't make your brain work, if you don't challenge yourself, it will not soak up the nutrients that it needs to progress. The brain is a 9.5-pound gland capable of amazing things, but if you don't use it and you don't challenge yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. And I love the way you put that. You've got to use your brain. And even at 76, the things that you're doing, I'm going, Rick, do you realize you're 76 right now? Are you, and you're like, it's just, but I think you pace yourself well, because it's not a race for you. It never has been. And I think that's a good way to look at life in itself. So let's get into a little bit now. You were just recently diagnosed with bladder cancer, I believe it was.
Correct.
And now there's a couple things I want to talk about here as we get into this. You're very much go, go, go. And you, like you said, you don't really slow down a lot. Describe kind of what happened when this hit you, because this is where I want our audience. Hey, Liz. Hey, Kimberly. Thanks for joining. Hey, Cindy. I want our viewers to know what the bombshell was for you and how you approached this at first.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be glad to do that, because I'm sure I've created the impression up to this point that there isn't anything I can't do or can't handle. I've done it. I've done so many different things. I'm the type of person that attacks problems. I eat them for lunch. I mean, I've always looked at myself that way, that I can solve any problem you throw in front of me, and I can solve your problem for you too, if you need help, type of thing. So that's kind of my personality. As I found out as I went through what I call my journey through anxiety and depression, it became pretty obvious that what I think my wife knew all along is I'm obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. 2 years ago, I would have said, nah, sorry, that's not me. But now I realize it is me. And it's just the way that I'm built, and I can't change that, but it can cause a problem. And I'll just give you a quick history of what I went through. In 2019, a urologist saw a small bladder tumor, cancer in my bladder, and they removed it and they biopsied it, and it was a low-grade non-invasive tumor. And okay, I could handle that. Cancer, I've had melanomas and things like that. And my view of cancer was, well, if you take care of yourself, number one, if you get it, and it's not going to be that serious. And if you keep getting early, catch it early, get yourself checked, which I've always been very religious about doing that. Catch it early, you can get rid of it. The melanomas, there were no margins. I'm good to go. The bladder tumor was non-invasive, small, low-grade tumor. And it's gone. And then every 3 or 4 months, the doc goes and looks again into your bladder, which is, I don't know if you've ever had that done, but it's kind of a religious experience when they go take a peek, because there's only one way to get in there. Oh. And I don't want, I won't go into any details, but most of us are not used to having things go that way. And so anywho, fast forward, no more, they check me every 3 or 4 months, no tumors. And I said to the urologist, so now the longer we go with no more tumors, is that the, pretty good indication I'm not going to have any more? He said, yes. He said, bladder tumors are something that recur in people with great frequency, but you've gone 2 years, you're in good shape. Well, yeah. So almost 2 years to the day, they're going to have one of those, look-sees, and there's another tumor. And okay, well, there's another tumor. Damn, I didn't want that to happen. But anyway, so they take it out and they biopsy it and they analyze it. And I'll never forget the doctor sitting across from me and said, this was a small, non-invasive, high-grade tumor. And my wife said, the look on my face, I just went pale. I didn't hear small, non-invasive. All I heard was high grade. Yeah. And I thought, oh crap, that does not sound good. And I asked, I said, well, what do we do? And she said, well, you get treated for 6 weeks, once a week, with an injection of BCG, which has a long name, but what it basically is the tuberculosis bacteria, which sounds crazy, but they inject this and into your bladder. And I said, how in the world did they ever decide they were going to treat bladder tumors with tuberculosis bacteria? That's crazy. She said, well, like a lot of medical discoveries, 30, 40 years ago, they made the observation that people with tuberculosis never had bladder cancer. And from that, they said, hey, let's try injecting tuberculosis bacteria into the person and see if that works. And it turns out it is the standard of care.
Now, this is the protein, correct? It's not actually tuberculosis. It's the protein. Is that right?
They told me it's a tuberculosis bacteria.
Okay.
And you have to be very careful with it, when it comes out, because you're only supposed to keep it in your bladder for 2 hours, and then it's supposed to go away. You know how it goes away. But they said, be very careful. You have to put Clorox in the toilet, and then, let it sit and then flush it and then do it again. And so, yeah, you can get tuberculosis from this.
Now, my thing, and I remember talking to you about this, not to cut you off.
No, that's all right.
I'm going, wait a minute.
Yeah, I know.
I understand what they're trying to do, and for the people on the DGB, the Disability Global Broadcasting Live on Facebook right now, I know we're listening to this going, wait a minute, did you just say they inject tuberculosis in the bladder to prevent bladder cancer? But we're gonna put tuberculosis inside of you and then take it away and then decontaminate the toilet because it's so strong. My mind would be going, like, how do you allow this to happen? And the tumor is now non-invasive, but it's high grade. So how in the living world did it go from non-invasive low grade to non-invasive high grade?
Well, I never had any treatments in those 2 years because it was low grade. Because it was low grade, they just monitor and watch you. If it's high grade, there's more of a chance of having more of them, and that's why they treat you that way. So that kind of threw me for a loop a little bit to have this treatment, but then I asked the urologist. I said, "So how effective is this treatment?" And I'm waiting to hear 95%, 40 to 60% effective. Yeah, that's right. Because here I am, an OCD kind of guy, waiting for hey, I'll do whatever's necessary, but I want 100% guarantee or 95% guarantee.
That's me.
Wasn't there 40 to 60%. I said, you tell me half the people have a recurrence of the tumors? Said, yes. Basically, that's about it. You got a 50-50 chance. And
so how did you, from right there, how did you battle with this? I mean, to decide to get it done. In my mind, I'd have been going through it. I'd have been, you 40 to 60%. Are you kidding me? Hey, Shayna, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. That is just, I mean, like you said, you want 80 to 90% at least. So how did you go through the okay, I'm going to go ahead and get this done?
Oh, well, since it was the standard of care, and I've never really resisted medical treatments that are the standard of care, I said, okay, if there's nothing you can do that's better than that, short of removing your bladder, go for it. So, but that kind of played on my mind. And I think, where we're going with this is, so how does a Navy captain, with all this experience, how does he end up, with severe anxiety and depression? And so anyway, so that's kind of the story behind where I got. And so I called my primary care physician because I was feeling, that threw me for a loop. And because and I think why it did, and here's a lesson that I think I learned from this, and probably everybody else learns at some point in their life, is when you have to face your own mortality. Okay. Now, I would always say, hey, I know I'm a human being. I'm going to die someday. I wasn't planning on living forever. I knew that I would die someday. But what becomes different is when you're facing something that could take you down. And, and now it's real and it's a possibility, because these things can metastasize and they can, and they can infect like any cancer can. If melanoma, if you don't get it soon enough, it's going to metastasize and it will kill you. Colon cancer takes a while, but if you don't get it treated, don't get those polyps removed, whatever, it'll kill you in about 10 years. That's what happened to my dad. He died at 61. because he had a colon cancer that metastasized to his liver. So, you know, but so I knew all these things, and I've always been very practical, but I am OCD. So this was one where I went, holy mackerel, this thing could take me down.
Yeah.
High grade, you know, and that's when I said, you know, Rick, you've thought about your mortality before, but you've never faced it like this. You've never faced it when all of a sudden it's a little closer. And you know, I was 75 years old when this happened. So I realized, hey, I can see the obituaries in the paper. You know, I can look at the birthdays. I know how many people are younger than 75 that are buying the farm. So, you know, I knew, hey, Rick, your time could be coming. And that was really the wake up call. And I think it was having to deal with my own mortality. And that kind of depressed me because all of a sudden, here's something I can't control anymore. Okay. No matter how bad I'd like to control this, you know, nope, nothing I can do to, you know, other than what they're doing to me. So I called my primary care physician and said, I think I'm a little depressed. And I described what I was going through, and it had manifested itself into something that I guess I called manic behavior, but that's the psychologist said, nah, that's not manic behavior. But what I would do, I would get up in the morning and I couldn't sit still. I would walk around the house. I would get on the elliptical orbiter. I would do push-ups till I couldn't breathe anymore, and I couldn't make this go away. This feeling, this anxiety from having to deal with this cancer. Nothing.
I had to keep going.
And I'm not a drinker and I don't do drugs. So you know, I wasn't going to get relief that way. So I just couldn't make this go away no matter where I tried to hide. You know, the best thing to do was to go to sleep at night because I could sleep. And, you know, for 8 hours, I didn't have to worry about this thing. But geez, I'd wake up and that was the worst part was the morning. I was so depressed and I couldn't get out of this. And so my primary care physician said, I think you need to go talk to somebody. Well, that's not the way I do business. You know, I solve my own problems. But at this point I said, okay, what do you recommend? He said, well, I got a good friend that's a psychiatrist over at EVMS. I said, oh, well, that's interesting. I used to teach there. But he said, I'm going to set you up an appointment with him. So bottom line is I went and talked to him. You know, it was interesting. My wife was with me and he kind of poo-pooed it a little bit like, this isn't any big deal. You're a Navy captain. You can handle this. And I'm sitting there going, no, I can't. So,
see right here, and I want to talk about some, you know, we talk about depression and there are different types. There's the knock you on your butt and keep you on the couch to where you can't do anything. There's the depression where you eat all the time. There's the depression where you don't do anything, where you don't go out of the house. There's the depression where you can't sit still because you're hyperactive and it's just boom, 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 and you can't make it go away. And you talked about your wife noticed, and I want to kind of go into that a little bit because that to me was your turning point when you told me this story, and you mentioned that you saw that it wasn't going away. You couldn't make it go away. You couldn't control it. You couldn't change it. What did your wife say to you? In that,
she said, you need to go talk to somebody, but she stood by me every step of the way, and I was not a pleasant person. I didn't abuse her or anything, but like I said, when you're walking around the house, up the steps, down the steps, you know, you're doing push-ups, right, and you're not having a good conversation, and when you're not doing that, you're sitting in your chair staring at the wall. You know, she knew something was not right, and she had never seen me like that before. So. Bottom line was I went and saw the psychiatrist. He referred me to a psychologist at EVMS, and I ended up talking to the psychologist for about 2 months, once a week for 2 months. And, you know, make a long story short, a psychiatrist will give you drugs. A psychologist will try to get inside your head and help you deal with whatever your problem is. So it's a lot fuzzier than, you know, the psychiatrist who looks at you and goes, hey, you're depressed. I'm gonna give you a drug.
Right. We're gonna mask this with this drug. We're gonna mask the symptom. Now go into I believe you said it's the psychologist part of it. Go into that because this is kind of what I want to get into with your story. This helped me on a lot a lot of ways because I didn't know what they were going to do. And you talked about put it on the shelf, and a couple of ways to deal with it. Can you go into some of that?
Yeah, sure will. And I won't give you a psychology treatment for anybody, but I can tell you the kind of things that they do. And first of all, the drugs were good. He put me on the something called fluvoxamine or something. It's an SSRI, and it helps. It helps in a physical way. To just makes you feel a little better. It does make you a little bit tired. I mean, I'm going to see him at the end of the month and I'm going to say, can I get off this stuff? Because it just makes me feel tired, but it dulls a little bit, makes you a little happier. Maybe it's not a happy drug, but an SSRI deals with serotonin, and I won't get into the details of that, but so he put me on that, and then he had me talk to this female psychologist, which really was more helpful because my problem was not physical. It was manifesting itself in a physical way, but that was not where the problem was. It was between my two ears, and so she was very patient and kind, and helped me, I think, immeasurably to deal with it, because there are certain techniques that people can do to help themselves get over a rough patch in their life. And I always thought that stuff is kind of hocus pocus. But it really isn't. I can tell you from having done it. I think they call it cognitive behavioral therapy is the term that they use for it. But some of the techniques that she would use, and I got some of the papers here that she used, was a thought log. Where you have an event that occurs, and you get bladder cancer. Okay, you think about what that is. And then you act. There's some behavior that you do after you've thought it through. And that's kind of what a human being does. Something happens, you think about it, and then you act. Okay. Well, what if you don't act rationally? That means something's wrong in that process that you're going through. The event happened, you did think about it, but then you didn't act in an appropriate, rational manner. And so the fourth thing is, all right, let's talk about how you acted and was that rational? And I'm a very rational human being in general. So I found it very effective to analyze, my reaction to a certain situation. And the thought didn't have to be you got bladder cancer. It could be something else.
All right, give our viewers just a little bit of the something happens and you think irrationally. That's where I've got cancer, I'm going to die automatically. Right? That's the irrational thought.
Well, it really is. It is, because nothing's ever quite that simple. Now, if somebody tells you you got stage 4 pancreatic cancer,
that's different.
That's a lot different than you had a high grade bladder tumor. And nobody had a better attitude about that than Alex Trebek. And it eventually got him because the statistics are just not good. But then that's a perfect example. Cancer is not cancer is not cancer. And you have to think rationally about what you've got, and go through that process of, and she had me maintain a thought log, every time I would think of something like, here's the event, COVID infection. Okay. That's an event, right? Everybody's aware of that. Okay. The thought is, oh my gosh, I may get COVID.
Okay.
Well, but then you've got to analyze that. And the consequence of that is you could die, especially at 75 years of age.
Okay.
So that's not irrational, to say that, but then you have to analyze it and say, well, what's rational? What's the chances that you're going to get that? Okay. So you dig into that a little bit and you think, well, maybe I better wear a mask. Maybe I better limit my contact in closed spaces with people, because there are many things you can do. Doesn't mean it's not 100% effective. But, you can get vaccinated when that was offered. You get the booster shot, which I got because I'm a geezer. So I qualify for the booster shot. And, so there's lots of rational things that you can do. She talked about cognitive distortions, how people take thoughts and distort them. Okay. And some of those were magnification and minimization. overgeneralization, catastrophizing. That was a tough one to say. Seeing only the worst possible outcome of a situation. Okay.
I think that's a big one. You
Yeah.
look at it and all you see is, oh my God, this, and there's nothing else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Magical thinking. I'm a good person. Bad things shouldn't happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Personalization. The belief that one is responsible for events outside their own control. That's a very important analysis to do. You know, my mom is always upset. She would be fine if I did more to help her. You know, jumping to conclusions, emotional reasoning. I mean, here again, I'm trying to give you a psychology lesson, but there's all sorts of techniques that one can use. She gave me a thing about the cognitive model, and this, I guess, this shows up backwards probably when you put it up there. But that was just a page, you know, something that seemed so simple, you know. And I looked at it, I go, you know, where am I, in grade school? But no, it really has a lot of basis in fact.
So there were two of them that you told me, and the one was, if I remember right, take the time to worry about it at a specific time, and then don't do it anymore. And then the other one was put it on the shelf. Those two.
Yeah. And when you find yourself worrying about something, okay, and you know, we as human beings, if we worry, we just tend to worry, and we don't put an end limit to it. Okay, it's as long as I can think about this, I'm going to worry about it. So another technique was, all right, let's say you're worrying about something. The kids are out, and I'm worried they're going to get in trouble. Okay, something like that. Give yourself 3 minutes and say, okay, for 3 minutes, you're going to worry about this. And so you set a timer, 3 minutes, you ruminate. But at the end of 3 minutes, you got to stop because you told yourself you're going to stop. The other thing is, you and I talked about, DJ, is when you get a thought in your mind, and let's say you're trying to go to sleep, but you can't get to sleep because this thing keeps going, this problem, you know, keeps going through your head. You know, tomorrow I have to,
your head.
Tomorrow I got to get up. I got to go see the dentist or whatever it is. And man, I think my tooth hurts. They're going to do something. And you start ruminating. That was the one word that the psychiatrist used, rumination. And so, you know, you're thinking about this and you can't fall asleep. And so what the technique is, you tell yourself, all right, this doesn't get me anywhere. I'm going to take this and put it over on the bureau or over on the shelf, this thought, and I'll pick it up tomorrow. No problemo. I'm not saying I'm not going to deal with it again. I'm just not going to deal with it now. I'm going to put it on the shelf and won't think about it now, but I promise myself I'll come back to it tomorrow. Because you got to do that, because what you don't want to do is say, I'm just going to blow this off, because that's not, and that's not going to get you anywhere. It's okay to think about going to the dentist, but you don't have to think about it so it keeps you awake at night. You can think about it the next morning when you wake up.
And you know, it's amazing that you said it, because I have a panic fear, and I mean a dreadful panic fear of going to the dentist. I'll sit in the chair like this, because I mean, it's one of those things. And I know I've been through the dentist, 12, 15, 20 times, and it ends up being okay. But it's that whole thing of his hands are in my mouth, the tools are in my mouth. And I had to learn, look, you have to go to the dentist. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Just take a breath, grin and bear it. Don't punch the dentist in the face. That's not going to help you. You've got to go through it. And I think that being able to take that problem and say, listen, I'm going to worry about this for 10 minutes, and I'm not going to worry about it anymore today. Setting boundaries, people set boundaries in life, but you have to do that with things that annoy you or bother you, because if not, they will take over, and you cannot let your problems take over your life. You have to maintain them in such a way that you're not controlled by what you can't control. And I think that's one of my big issues, not to mention the OCD, but that's just, but I agree. We got about 15 minutes left, and I just want to go through when did you notice that the technique started working? How did you notice the depression or the anxiety start going away? When did you notice that it was working?
It's probably at least 2 or 3 sessions with the psychologist, before it kicked in. Because here again, if your listeners are sitting there thinking, put it on the shelf, that's so freaking hocus pocus. I can't believe it. Who is this guy? Who is this guy you have on here? And because I think that way, that's the way I am. But I thought, hey, I'm going to give this thing a shot. If I'm going to bother going to them, I'm going to at least try, even though I think it's a little bit of hocus pocus, put it on the shelf. But then I would do something like I'd be ruminating about something, and I thought, all right, I'm going to put it over on the dresser. And so I pictured myself picking it up and putting it on the dresser. And then I thought, oh, okay. But I said, okay, Rick, you said you're not going to talk. You're not going to think about it anymore. You can't think about it. It's on the dresser. You can pick it up tomorrow morning. And I'll be damned if I didn't fall asleep. I mean, so I started thinking, hey, maybe there is something to this hocus pocus. I always thought psychology was kind of, hocus pocus stuff. If you couldn't study math, you studied psychology because you weren't smart enough to study math. And I was a math major, by the way. But here's challenging negative thoughts is another one that they gave me, which is really good, because when you're having a negative thought, and we all know what's negative and what's positive, it says, answer the following questions about your thought. Is there substantial evidence for my thought? Probably there is. Okay. But it might be, you might stop right there and go, there really isn't. I
can't sustain this because there's nothing to support it.
Yeah. So, but there may be evidence. Is there evidence contrary to your thought? Make that assessment. Am I attempting to interpret the situation without all the evidence? Boy, could our politicians use this. I'd love to give this to our politicians. Okay. And here's a really good one. What would a friend think about this? Somebody that's detached, they're not you, they're just a good friend, they're a smart person. If you ask them, what do you think about this? What do you think they'd say? And you'll find out that it's probably not what you're thinking. If I look at the situation in a positive way, how is it different? Okay. And will this matter a year from now?
All right. So there's two comments I want to read here and that our viewers have said. Kimberly said this. She said, I just found out recently I have OCD when it comes to putting my bathroom towels on the rack the right way. Now watch this. Kim, I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. When you put your towels on the rack, how do you know that that's the right way? What law tells you, or what substantial evidence tells you that that's the right way? Because the last time I checked, you can put your towels on the rack any way you want to, as long as you think that's the way they should go. But don't let it consume you, because it doesn't really matter. As long as they're up there and they work, that's what you want. Now this one here, again, Cindy said this. I think that sounds like a good idea. Otherwise, you can just worry yourself to death. When you were just reading that statement, you have to find ways to challenge yourself to where, you have to challenge yourself to where you've got to think about it. Just what you said, because I did it to me, so it's right. That's what I'm saying. But it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. To somebody else, they can look at it and go, you know what? You had the towels up there. They're up there. It's fine. See, so it's all in what you're seeing inside what you're looking at. The situation that you're taking control of, you're saying this is right, because somebody else can come from the outside and say, the towels were fine before. Why did you change it? See, it's all about what the person that's doing the action is seeing.
But I would say, if DJ, that if does thinking of being a little OCD about the towels, does that bother you, Kimberly? That you're a little OCD about that?
Let me see what she said here. I hate when someone uses it and changes the position. So you, because you like things to go a certain way, that's not necessary. See, and this is where OCD kind of ticks me off a little bit, because somebody can say someone's OCD about it, but as long as you're not like going mental when somebody changes it, I mean, it that you have to get up from dinner and go change it because somebody just changed it. That's kind of where you don't want to let it get you to that position. And I know people like that, but it's one of those things. But when you feel like, what would you say is a good way when you feel like you're OCD about something, or you feel like it's controlling you to the point that you can't think past it? Rick, what would you say that you can do, or what would you do if it starts controlling up here?
Well, all these techniques that the psychologists came up with, challenging negative thoughts, that's one of them. Do an analysis to see, is this a cognitive distortion? Mm-hmm. Is there any magnification or minimization? Are you seeing only the worst possible outcome? You go through this and say, I went down and checked them. Back when I was going through this, there like maybe 10 of them. I checked like 8 of them, in terms of how I was dealing with things at that time. And that told me, ooh, you got a problem, Rick.
Let's go back and reevaluate this.
Yeah, you need to go through some of these techniques, for doing that. There was another one, the cognitive model that they gave me. I thought this was really interesting, because she gave me some situations to analyze. And the first one was situation. Emily is cut off by another driver and has to quickly hit her brakes. Here's Emily's thought. What a jerk. They don't care about anyone but themselves. I could have crashed. The emotion is angry. The behavior. Emily drives aggressively to provoke the driver who cut her off. Emily is still angry when she gets home and yells at her family. Okay. I read that and I went, hello, that's me.
Because you're holding.
The psychologist would have me do, what's a rational thought in that situation? And I'm thinking, all right, well, maybe the person didn't see her. Okay. She was avoiding some hazard in the road. She wasn't trying to cut the person off, because we really don't know why that happened. And so then it says, well, what's the new emotion and behavior? You ask yourself, geez, I wonder what else it could be. Right. Breathing and letting it go. Maybe the driver had a physical thing happen to them. It doesn't have to be all about you, and how this didn't play well with you. So the psychologist would take me through some of these drills that I would think, what the heck does that have to do with me? But then I found that
a lot.
It does, because it's all about how you think about it, and how you look at it.
Very, very.
DJ, you want me? I know you have to go at 3, right?
Yeah, I do. I want to go. I've got 2 questions here before we end.
Okay.
So you've dealt with all this cancer now. You're cancer free at this point. You've battled through. You've had all the injections, and that's a whole nother story that you talked about that, and I'm like, wow, it's painful.
Yeah. I mean, I can show you how they did it if you want.
No.
Okay.
That was a joke, guys. He's not going to do that. What would you say to your former self going through that now? If you could go back and talk to the Rick that just a couple of years ago went through all of this, what would you say to him now?
Well, first of all, the most traumatic one was only May, so it wasn't that long ago. Mm-hmm. I would say you thought you knew it all, but you really didn't. That's what I would say. But let me add one thing, DJ, before you have to go, because I think this is very important. I think this is important for everybody. You have to define what's your reason for living. Sit down, and I wrote it down. And then come up with a mantra. And I say this every morning, because to me, a mantra is things are good and true, and how you want to live your life. And detach yourself from your emotional thought and write those things down, because you can do that. And then that becomes your mantra. These are the things that that really are important to you. The top 10 things that are important. I have 3, and the first 3 are related to my Christianity. Okay. God is with me always. Okay. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. God and Christ are the strength in my life. Those types of things. And then my mantra is, I'm going to love my family. I'm going to stay busy. I'm going to help others. I'm going to think before I speak and act. Just maybe 10 things that these are your cornerstones that guide you. My body is but a vessel for the Holy Spirit. It does not define me. And anybody's got a disease, that's an important one. My body is but a temple for the Holy Spirit. That's the important thing in anybody, is their spirit. Okay, their consciousness and their spirit. And that's not defined by what's wrong with your body. Whether you have cancer, whether you have CP, whatever you have.
Right.
That doesn't define your spirit, DJ.
Well, and the other thing, too, is in looking at one of the things that, especially with anxiety and depression, and very few people start their day off positive. When you open your eyes and your feet hit the floor, start your day off by looking in front of the mirror and saying, I am this. This is going to be a good day because. I have said this probably 500,000 times. My boss that allowed me to have this show and that has been with me for almost 5 years now, 4 years now, she does not speak negativity in her life. She will not allow it. And the amazing thing is, I used to ask her, how does she do that? Because I don't see how that can happen. So I started trying to do it. I started trying to go about, I'm not going to let negativity in. I'm going to look at the positive side of every situation, even if it's labeled as a bad situation, because you can make positive out of a technical bad situation. It's all in how you look at it, just like we talked about today. So with Rick being on the show today, you got a couple of things. Yeah, he's very, I can solve this. I can solve this. I can solve this. I can fix this. I can change this. Until he hit that wall. Bam! He hit the wall, and it's like, oh, God, what do I do now? Okay? So there's that moment, that ricochet moment where we get hit in the face and we go down a little bit, and it takes the wind out of us, and we got to go, how do I get up from this? Well, you get up from it one move at a time. It's not necessarily you're going to jump up, pop back up, and start boxing again. Sometimes you stumble, sometimes you fall, sometimes you scrape your knee, sometimes you scrape your elbow, sometimes you go, ow, that hurt. I'm going to stay down here for a second and get myself together. And then you get back up and you keep going. It's not that you get knocked down. Getting knocked down happens. As we end the show today, getting knocked down happens. The point is, are you going to stay down? Or are you going to continue your life the best way you can by moving forward? Because you can't stop progress. You can only delay it. Can't stop progress. You can only delay it. I want to thank Rick for being on the show today. What a great, great message that he left with us. I want to thank all of our viewers, JP, Cindy, Kimberly, all of you guys coming in. Please share the show. We're available every Wednesday at 2 p.m. This was episode 73 of My CP Does Not Define Me. You guys can find me on Twitter, My CP Does Not Define Me at Minion Sports. Instagram, My CP Does Not Define Me. You can find me on Facebook, My CP Does Not Define Me. YouTube, My CP Does Not Define Me. Chairmaster Games, and also Worth the Wait Cooking with DJ Carter. My blog, CarterDJ85 at Wix.com. And I'm working on my new TikTok that's not up yet, but we're still working on it. My CP Does Not Define Me. We'll have that out for you guys soon. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I always say, if you can't be good, be bad, but be good at it. This is D to the J with a roll away, saying we'll see you next week.
All right, everybody, that's going to do it for this week's episode of My CP Does Not Define Me. As always, you can catch us every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Disability Global Broadcast and Facebook Live. If you haven't already checked out our YouTube channel, My CP Does Not Define Me, we post all of the show videos in our My CP playlist. I'm your host, D to the J with the roll away. And if you can't be good, be bad, but be good at it. We'll see you next week.